All right. Welcome to episode 1 of the Uncensored Crew podcast, our first ever episode. I'm Mike, and I'm with my co-host, Evan.
I'm Evan.
So, first thing we're going to touch on here, there's one reason we're doing this podcast. And I think you can guess by the name. In our society, it seems as though different media outlets, different government administrations, and different people on certain sides of the aisle are trying to shut down free speech. They're trying to shut down open debate. And that's obviously both illegal in North America between Canada and the United States. And it's also just morally wrong and completely unethical. So our whole idea is to bring that back and to basically open the discussion to any and all topics where most mainstream media will not talk about certain things. So now we're going to make sure that they don't get a hold of this. And the opinions that you genuinely want to hear and want to be able to openly discuss, you can do so. Without character attacks, without name calling, without demonizing each other, and just normal, open dialogue as we once had, seems like forever ago. So what's the first topic that comes to your head, Evan?
Well, I was thinking of the charter of what we're being persecuted for freedom of speech, and how the charter is being ignored by our leader in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, and for those of you who don't know or can't tell, we are in Canada, at least. I mean, we're both in Canada, at least for the time being. That might change for me in the near future. But basically, what's been going on is if you have a different opinion than our current administration or what is considered the normal viewpoint now, you are being demonized, you are being criticized, you're being shut down, basically told that you don't belong in society. And that's not at all true. And I mean, we can have a difference of opinion. We can all still, on a civilized level, get along. Unfortunately, some folks disagree with that ideology. But that's why we're here, because we want everyone to be able to speak freely. And I think the movement needs to come back, and we need to have enough people supporting freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and not have that demonization whatsoever. So I will invite anyone who's in Canada or in the United States right now to pull up your country's founding documents. If you're in Canada, it's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You can find it publicly accessible.
Website.
You can find it publicly accessible on Google. There was actually a university who made a PDF version of it. That's one I have saved on my own computer. And I'm pretty sure the U.S. Constitution is publicly available through Google as well. So, I mean, on both of them, you have a protected right to free speech. You have a protected right to express yourself without persecution, without being attacked for it.
May I jump in now?
Go for it.
So what I was thinking, since the charter was brought up and our leader ignoring that, he has publicly admitted that he's going to limit our fundamental rights, as his words were. And I'm surprised he would use fundamental, because fundamental, we are built on those rights in Canada. All the way back to I don't mean to be the historian here, but back to the conception of our country, and Sir John A. Macdonald was the main part. I'll use the Americans' way of saying it, our founding father, Sir John A. Macdonald, did bring our communities together. There were Irish, there were natives, and English, French, and everybody of that time. He brought us together under those rights. So him attacking that, the way I consider it, our country doesn't exist anymore.
No, the Canada we grew up in, I can wholeheartedly say that I look at the Canadian flag and it doesn't represent anything that I was taught or raised to believe. And I also want to just quickly mention, for anyone who's going to say that Evan isn't authorized to speak about our founding fathers, I'll add this just so everyone's aware. Evan is actually a direct descendant of our founding father.
Not direct, but I am
a relative of, same bloodline of Sir John A. Macdonald. So realistically, Evan does have ties back to the roots of the foundation of Canada. And I mean, you could go through
to go through that because that's a little bit of a boast, but
it's not though, because that gives you a ground to stand on.
Yeah. Just because he's family, I don't like bragging. I'd rather just state what's happening now. But yes, he is a relative of mine. He's my 5th great uncle. And the people that, I don't hold any hardship with them other than they're misguided. With Sir John A. Macdonald being defaced for his statue, that's fine. But they're misguided that he is a racist, which he really wasn't. And I've researched my uncle very, very much, because he is the founder of our country.
Right. And I'm actually glad you brought up the defacing of statues, because I think there's like you said, misguided ideology around that. A lot of people are tearing down, dismantling, burning historical monuments because they think, oh, well, there were things wrong with our past. There were things wrong in history. Right. I'm not disagreeing with that. There are things in our past that we may not think of too highly and that maybe we shouldn't be proud of. But there's something to be said.
I do want to
go for it.
I do want to say, for that dark past, we do recognize and acknowledge that Canada does have a dark past in and I know some of the details. And to come so far as blaming it on Sir John A. Macdonald, let's say, being a racist, or there was a motion that he's done in the House of Commons historically, that he was actually wanting to have equality in the country, and the Liberal Party, I'll say it's different than what it was, but it's still the Liberal Party back then, did not want to acknowledge the equality during that time that Sir John A. Macdonald put a motion through.
Right. And The thing is, if we start to tear down statues, if we start to dismantle pieces of our history, then there's nothing for future generations to learn from. Because the only way to learn from history is to recognize that it exists, and there were things that, by today's standards, we don't live by anymore. There are a lot of things that I'll say in the past that, from several leaders, regardless of which side of the spectrum or which side of the aisle they were on, may have not done things right, at least in my eyes. But I'm not going to say that it hasn't formed how I live my life today, because if you look on both sides of the aisle and you say, well, I don't like what he did, I don't like what they did, then that's fine. You don't have to like what they did. But now you get to have the opportunity.
We don't even like what they did.
Right. And now you get to have the opportunity to move forward and not act the way that they did, and correct that going forward. That we can.
It's quite simply learning from our mistakes from history.
Right. And we learn from our own mistakes every day. I can almost 100% say that there are probably some things I did in my past that I'm not proud of, that I'm not particularly satisfied that I made those decisions. But now I know that I'm not making those decisions again, and that I am smarter than I once was, and I'm able to think a little bit more logically and more independently than past times. And I think that's another thing that people have a hard time doing now, is we don't think independently anymore. I mean, you and I do.
But there are quite a few, but there's some that don't let others think independently.
Right. And a lot of the time, the pushback I get for some of my opinions, some of my views, people say, well, so-and-so said this. It's like, okay, but what did you say? What did you think? I don't care what the source that you got your information from. I don't care what that person or that source thinks. What do you think? Because a lot of mainstream media, a lot of politicians are very biased, and they're going to tell you things based off of how they look at the situation, how they look at the potential outcomes.
And that just ties in with our rights that we were founded on, with a democracy and being a free country in Canada. Our fundamental rights for freedom of speech is the utmost importance of our society, to be able to talk with other people to get problems solved.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that's with any society. You have to talk to be able to get problems solved. Otherwise, they will go lingering and withering away.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't. The more we let problems and the more we let things sit and not take action on them, then they become bigger problems. And I think we've seen, as we're still in the middle of a health crisis, if that's what we can call it at this point, because honestly, I don't believe that's what it is, and it never was. But this could have been solved a long time ago. And unfortunately, because of the way people act, they rather go along with thinking that government and media have their best interest in mind, when really they revolve around money. They don't revolve around your health. They don't revolve around your well-being. They don't give a damn about the individual person, whether you're in Canada or the United States. They care about what the dollar figure associated with it is. How much money are they making off of this?
The government really doesn't give any cares to us. No. Yeah, they might virtue signal. It's like, there's a pandemic. Yeah, but what about our founding principles, our morals? The fact that we were a country founded on Christian values, if I may say, because my fifth grade uncle was Christian, and the other people around him during that time, other founding fathers of this country, were Christian. There were 90% of the country, if not 100% of the country back then, was Christian. It's lesser now, but it's important to think of, because if we go further from those values, we're just destroying what we were founded on.
We're headed in a direction that is only going to destroy our country as a whole. The principles we once upheld, the things we were once taught, no longer exist. There was a time I remember being in school where they would get mad at you if you didn't stand for the anthem, or if you didn't remove your hat for the anthem. And now it's acceptable for people to kneel during the anthem and disrespect it? What went wrong? Where did things change?
The whole anthem is, we stand on guard for you. Those stand on guard are those Christian values that we were founded on, being that we do not fear anything.
And that our men and women in uniform fought and died for.
I don't fear this disease.
Nope.
I just don't want government overreach. I wanted to use some other words, but I will be polite. I don't want government overreach. The government needs to take their fingers out of society. Absolutely
they do. And there's only a few leaders out there who still back that and who still stand for that. I can name two that are in the U.S. And there's one in another part of the world that I actually don't know the name of the leader, but I know the governor of Florida, one of my favorite leaders, Ron DeSantis, still stands for freedom and still stands for people's ability to make their own choices and deal with their own outcomes. And I think Greg Abbott in Texas does that as well. I don't know the leader of Sweden, what their name is, but they right now, at least the time we're recording this, don't have any mandates or any restrictions, at least from what I've been told by another influencer who lives in Sweden right now. There's no mandates there, and they make their own decisions. People wear a mask.
I find it funny that there's no limits in other countries. You're completely open. You're living your life as you would before COVID.
Yep.
And they're doing fine. They're not dropping on the streets. They're not having that much trouble at all. They're just living.
Yeah.
And with this restrictions, as where I live in a certain province of Ontario, not being able to work as much. If you have to, you have to wear a mask, be triple vaccinated, just to work, make a living. And I think that's been muddled in with political mumblings.
Yep.
I think the way to make a living should not be impeded, since it's part of our charter as well. And I don't know why people are continuing to oppress people. Sorry if I'm having a hard time talking, because I don't want to be rude. But I'm trying to articulate that we should not impede the means to actually live.
And we never should have.
Actually live is having a job and buying food. And those two have been threatened in Ontario.
Yeah.
I, for one, will not stand for any of that. And that's where my line is. Unfortunately, people don't agree in the political spectrum.
There's a lot of people who don't agree, and I think it's more so, I'll say, in Ontario than where I am here in Alberta. And a little backstory to that, and I guess a little backstory on me and Evan as well. I lived in Ontario for the first 25 years of my life, and I saw it going downhill fast, so I took the opportunity last year to pack my life up and move out to Alberta. The problem here is that when I moved here, there was freedom. We had no mandates, no restrictions. People were making decisions for themselves. 2 weeks after I moved here, or roughly that amount of time, the mask mandate was back. And only maybe a month or two, not even 2 months, a little bit more than a month after that, they introduced the proof of the jab proof that had to be presented, despite having a leader in Alberta who said before he put the mask mandate in place that he would never do that, before he put the papers mandate in, that he would never do that. And he folded and did both. I won't mention his name because he knows who he is, and I've already gone after him a couple times on my Twitter account for that.
I don't... do you mind if I say my provincial leader?
Go for it. He's been in the news everywhere.
My provincial leader, Doug Ford, he has said things and completely did the opposite in thinking that he'll be that businessman and be like somebody further south, but he was just virtue signaling like the others of a different party. Doug Ford has said he's going to make so many jobs, and then he'll open up Canada, get business going, and our Ontario will be ours to discover. That's the motto of Ontario, at least. But he's followed everything that the Prime Minister has said.
Yep.
He's flopped on everything. And before you think of, like, well, he has to follow the Prime Minister. No, he doesn't.
No.
Our governance comes from our premiers. And that's who directly deals with the province.
Right.
And in regards to, well, then he'll get he'll be reprimanded for his disobeying of orders from the Prime Minister. That's also not true. He can also bring up the charter and say, no, you have to follow this as well. It's the federal rules, federal and our charter of across Canada that gives us our freedoms. And even that, Doug Ford has ignored our provincial freedoms as well.
Yep. Part of the reason I left.
I feel like leaving too, but circumstances in life doesn't always happen.
Right. And I mean, for the people who are going to say, like you mentioned, that they have to follow the federal leadership, here's the thing. That's the problem with that mentality, is there's a reason that both Canada and the US actually have these different levels of government. So there's the federal, provincial, and then municipal. And in the US, it's federal, state, and then I think it's county or township, whatever it is. I think it differs by state. But there's a reason for those different levels. And it's so there's a certain level of gridlock. There's a certain level of being able to have governance. Notice I said governance, not dictatorship, over your jurisdiction. So even if the federal government says you have to do something, it's still up to your state or provincial leader to decide whether they're going to follow that. And then from that point, it's up to the mayor of each city, municipality, county, whatever. It's up to them to decide whether they're going to follow what the governor or premier says, or they're going to follow what the prime minister or president says, or whether they're going to ignore both and do what they want. That's the one part of each government system between Canada and the US that is not broken. That's the one part that's not broken, is having that ability to have say over your own jurisdiction if you're in a position of leadership. Because if you get rid of the municipal level, if you get rid of the state or provincial level, you end up with a country like Cuba or like Venezuela, or I don't really want to mention a certain one, but the opposite of South Korea. And I'm only saying it that way because I fear the leader of the other one. Even, you know what, there's a leader I don't fear anymore that I used to. The communist leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has said that it's up to each individual person whether they want to put a certain thing in their body. A dictator has said it's a personal choice.
I find it funny that a dictator of another country gives more freedoms than a supposed free country than, you know, us. Like, we don't have freedoms to... Vladimir says no vaccine mandates.
Yeah. No mask mandates either.
It's no mask mandates either. And I hope you guys don't go and attack him, but...
I wouldn't.
Good job, though.
I really wouldn't.
Good luck if you want to attack him.
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
And there's going to be some people that are going to say...
that he respects the individual still.
And there's certain people that are going to say, well, there's corruption.
To a certain degree.
There's people that are going to say there's corruption. Yeah, well, you know what? There's corruption in every government around the world. None of them are perfect. There was a time that I remember there's a few people that said, well, Australia had great governance. They were doing okay. Yeah, look at Australia now. Even if there is a so-called perfect system in place, it's not going to last, because the way our world works now is that nobody's ever satisfied. And if there's a group of people that are satisfied, there's an opposing side of the aisle who aren't.
I want to mention that those societies that has, like, those governments that have corruption and all that, with, in comparison to the collectivism governments, and I won't say it too much, but let's just say there are examples of Stalin's and back then Mussolini's collectivism of, all right, I'll just say it, China, communism with socialism, with that corruption that's in those, as well as compared to our corruption, being free societies, we have freedoms of individuals where we can take it to a court to dispute.
Right.
With that collectivism idea, with everything being owned by the government, being communist or social income, food, everything.
UBI.
Yeah, everything through the government. Okay, to make a point with collectivism, governments, the point is that I don't know why people support it because all your income all your things are supplied through the government. Healthcare, money, something like that. And then you technically work for the government. If you don't like how the government then is doing things and you protest and they get wind of that, they take your individual income and we've seen it before in other governments, but they take your income and take it away.
And for the people who can't put that thought together, who can't put two and two together there, let me compare it to this. Say you are employed, you have a job, and management comes to you and says, you need to do this to keep your job, to keep getting paid. And you say, nope, I don't agree with that. What happens? I think a lot of us have experienced it. You're out the door. They're no longer paying you because you disagreed with what they wanted. The difference is that when it's with government, if you're relying on government income I'll put it two ways because some people actually need to because of disabilities and whatnot. But if you're relying on government income just because you don't want to work or too lazy to work, and all of a sudden you disagree with something they do and you start revolting against them and they take away that basic income that they've been giving you, now what? You can't get a job because you've been out of work for too long. You have no basic income level from the government. So you can't provide for yourself, or if you have a family, you can't provide for your family either. So now you become the weakest link. You become the runt of the litter, essentially. What happens to the runt of the litter? More often than not. And I don't want to sound harsh, but runt of the litter, more often than not, dies.
I also want to point out I do have examples of that, of friends being affected by the government not allowing them to provide for their family. So I do know what I'm talking about. A friend out west and a friend in Quebec. And I think it's totally wrong to put in conditions to hinder their ability to live.
It's morally wrong, and it's also unethical to do that. I mean,
ethics is morals.
To put restrictions, or in another way, conditions on allowing people to live is something that in a free society can't be done. In any society really can't be done because it's just inhumane and it goes against basic human rights. The problem is when you're involved in government and you start doing under the table negotiations, or you start seeing a dollar sign associated with each move that you make, and you start making more money aside from your base salary, which we all know most of these politicians do, then they're no longer thinking with their brain. They're thinking with a dollar sign. They're thinking with a monetary value attached to each move that they make and each decision that happens. And you see when certain decisions are made, we said Jody Wilson-Raybould, who used to be in Canada's House of Commons, dismissed because she had told our leader, I'll put it in quotes, not to do a certain thing. And when she told him not to do a certain thing, he saw it as, oh, well then if I can't do that, it's going to stop me from making money. And I don't want to lose that money. I'd rather lose an employee, a staff member, because in his mind, they're disposable.
An important word to learn is coercion.
Right. And a lot of people are being coerced or paid off to not say anything. Out here in Alberta, when the jab first came into effect, they were offering people $100 per shot to take it. Bribery. And let's bring it back. I'm going to reference an episode of Friends because it's the first example I can actually think of. There was an episode of Friends where Joey was taking part in medical experiments or experiments for science, and they were paying so much per experiment. Why do they pay for that? They pay because they know there's a liability and a risk associated with it. They wouldn't be offering money if it was 100% safe. They wouldn't have to offer you money if it was 100% safe and you weren't going to experience some type of side effects, or if you couldn't potentially be killed from it. So if they're...
I want to make a point for anybody that does disagree with all of what we're saying. We would welcome you to
join us,
discuss it with us, and we could talk it over on our podcast. I would like to debate anybody that wants to.
Yeah. We're open and extending an olive branch.
You might actually be the farthest left and you support vaccines, you support masks. That's
your choice.
That's fine. But I don't care where you say you should wear a mask to be able to work.
No,
I don't think that's morally right. You can disagree
with both of us,
but with us in society, we have to come back to realities at some point.
And we have to reinstill that personal responsibility is a thing. And I say that for one reason. And I saw this quote somewhere too, and it was a perfect quote. Your health is not my priority. Your fear is not my concern. Both of those are yours and yours alone. You take the risk.
It's how you react to all those things.
Right.
When people criticize me, and for me to set an example, I would say personal responsibility, yes, is a very important thing to learn. When you're feeling sick, stay home.
Yep.
I know you might have a job, but call your job. I am sick. I need time to recover.
And I think that's what we used to do before.
Wait until it's over and then go back.
And I think that's what we used to do before, whether you're in school, whether you're working full time. If you're under the weather, you don't go to school or you don't go to work. You let them know with at least some reasonable notice that, hey, I'm under the weather. I'm unable to perform my tasks at my best. It is better for me to...
All the employer stuff I've had is like, yeah, stay home.
My employer now, and I'm not going to mention any names just because I don't want to bring anyone into it.
Lose your job.
What?
Don't want the risk of somebody attacking your
job. That too. But...
I know that's happened.
Yeah.
That's a side
point. That happens, but my job, I love where I work right now because they're the type of employer where if they can tell, like, and we all work remote right now because it's just the state of the world, and it's also a very good way to extend business. If you're under the weather, they will tell you, we prefer you to be healthy. Like, if you're coughing up a lung, if you're, barely able to keep your eyes open, if you're recovering from a night of drinking, stay home or take the day off.
Well, a night of drinking is kind of irresponsibility the night before. You gotta take that into
absolutely
account,
and I'm not saying that's a...
You don't say that to your employer. I'm throwing up.
If that's the case, look, if you've been drinking and you're dealing with a hangover, you don't tell them that. You say, look, I'm sick. I did not get a good night's sleep because I am under the weather. I will see you tomorrow. You don't need to mention more than that.
But don't do it too. If you do that too often,
they're
obviously
going to catch on to what's going on. We're not saying do that all the time. Obviously, be responsible, go to work, make a paycheck, earn a paycheck.
Yeah. Don't drink the night before. Drink responsibly. Please.
Yeah, I don't drink on work nights. I really don't. I will drink on weekends and that when I'm not working. But at the end of the day, your employer, the point we're making is a reasonable and responsible employer will be understanding if you're under the weather, if you're sick, to stay home and wait till you recover to come back to work. That's why most employers, at least under regulations in Canada, if you're working full-time, legally have to give you 6 days a year. So they give you 3 personal days and 3 sick days. And that's recently been implemented from my understanding, because 3 personal days means dealing with mental health matters, which is extremely important. And then 3 days for sick days. Now, obviously, those can be interchangeable. And there's even some employers, if they're really nice, they'll give you your birthday off. It's rare, but you do get that off if you choose to take it. And the other point, when it comes to employment, people have the wrong understanding that when you get a job and they say you get 2 weeks vacation, you don't get 2 weeks vacation from the day you start. That's accumulative. You get 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks, from a certain amount of days and hours worked. I don't get 2 weeks off from the day I start. I get a percentage of whatever the amount of hours I've worked. The one I've actually been able to experience and use, if I worked, say, 4 or 5 months, that's about equivalent to 2 days off, 2 paid vacation days, from my experience. So if you want a full 2 weeks paid vacation, work your ass off for basically a full year. You get 2 weeks per year, meaning you work a full year. Then you get 2 weeks of paid days off. 14 days, whatever it is. Or 10.
I think it's 14
days.
Is
it 14?
now. It was 12 when 14, yeah. I think it's 14. Depends on your province.
Depends on your province and the regulations in your province or in your state, I guess. I don't know what it's like in the U.S. We're speaking on terms of what we know in Canada. And that's another thing. We extend the olive branch to people who have opposing opinions. And we also, we do have another co-host, and he'll be introduced on, I want to say episode 3 probably, of this podcast, who lives down in Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee. A buddy of mine from Umpire School, Connor, will join us. He's an American. So Americans, jump in on this as well. We'd love to have you on. We want the input on what's going on in your state, in the country, whether you're in a red state, whether you're in a blue state, doesn't really matter. We want to know how you're holding up. We want to know how your living circumstances are, just to get that different lifestyle and different view and different perspective of the challenges that different people in different areas face. And actually, at some point, I want to get my buddy, influencer, Trav for Oilers on here. He's a goalie, playing professional hockey in Sweden. I want to get him on to talk about how things are over in Sweden, because I've heard they're very different there than what we deal with in North America. The lifestyle is very different. So that would be, Trav, if you're listening, message me, because we'd love to have you on. Anyway, sorry, we got off on a bit of a tangent. What were you saying?
I wasn't saying much. I don't know what other topic that we can touch on right now.
I think with this,
Charter was pretty well covered with freedom of speech.
And that covers in the U.S. Constitution as well. I mean, the first episode was more getting you guys into why the importance of no censorship exists, and the importance of free speech and personal choice.
Why censorship shouldn't exist.
Right.
In a free society.
Right. And I mean, free society realistically in a perfect world, which will never exist, should be for the entire globe. Obviously, there are countries who are struggling, and there are countries who won't even be able to see this or listen to this because they don't have the ability to do so because it's blocked. Anything that's against the common flow of that country is blocked. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for episode 1. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and
it was fun doing the podcast.
We're very new to this, so give us some slack on the first couple of episodes as we start to try and get into a rhythm, and hopefully we'll see you.
Also, I'll try and tidy up a bit.
Yeah, it looks like you got a bit of stuff going on over there. And I'm going to be in the middle of packing soon too. So this view that you're seeing probably won't last. I can't say for sure, but as we get into the swing of things, I hope you guys join along with us and really join the movement.
Hopefully we can get the podcast going.
And there's also a link in the description of this episode of this video. I don't have anything to show right now. But if you click a certain link in the description, we have another way for you to join our movement and also help you contribute to our podcast so we can continue making these episodes. I'll say one word.
And please do.
I'll say one word. Merch. Go grab it. We appreciate your support. We'll see you guys.
Get us started.
We'll see you guys in the next episode.